And do Christina's part of the interview. And then we can have a Q&A at the end, if that's okay with everybody. Okay. All right, we're good. Okay. And I think Jackie said she was coming in. So I'm not familiar with Zoom. Teams is my friend here. There we go. So, and I'm going to miss everybody on Zoom, but it is now 6:30 and we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you everybody for being here tonight. Very excited about tonight's presentation. And we'll get to that in just a couple minutes. I'm Lee Townley. I'm going to ask all of our special district guests to introduce themselves and say hello. And then we will go ahead and get started with our presentation. So Beth, you're first on my window. So we'll just go on from there.
All right, and I changed the background yet again. I'm Beth Williams, Curriculum Supervisor for Emotional Behavioral Disabilities in the district, as well as having a number of other responsibilities. That I'm so glad to be here tonight and so glad to see you guys here.
Hi, I'm Diane Egan. I'm the Pre-K Elementary Director, and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to join you in your meeting tonight. I'm looking forward to a great presentation, and we're here to answer any questions and support you in any way we can.
I'm Christina Reyes. I'm one of the district coordinators for psychological services, and I'll be here presenting to you a little bit about students who have attentional difficulties, and we're going to talk a little bit about COVID and coping with COVID. Nice to be here.
And this picture changed. Did I miss anybody? Okay. Jen, you want to introduce yourself real quick? Could you set all this up?
Sure. I'm Jen Ellis. I am, oh gosh, my titles keep changing, but now I'm the vice chair of ESC Advisory. I am the co-chair of ACE, which is the Autism Committee. And I am the computer guru. So if you need anything tech-wise, I am here.
And Jen, you asked us to remind you to make sure you started the recording.
I got it. Thank you.
I don't even know if I'm on. Okay. All right. So if we, thank you guys very much. Would anybody else like to introduce themselves before we move on?
Go ahead, Barry.
I'll jump in. I'm Barry Aronson. I'm with Florida Inclusion Network, and I'm here to help with any inclusion questions about how to include our students in gen ed classrooms and in the school community.
Okay, great. Thank you. You guys keep shifting on my window. I'm not trying to support the district's effort to use MS Teams or like favor one over the other, but I'm so used to using Teams. Every time I come onto Zoom, it changes and I get lost. So I'm sorry. And then Jackie just came in. Jackie, do you want to introduce yourself? And there's so many Lee Townleys on here because they all used my link. I don't know where everybody is.
I see my partner Barbara just jumped on. She's here. Barbara, if you want to introduce yourself too.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Barbara Krakauer, the other FIN facilitator. Happy to be here. Looking forward to Christina's presentation.
Welcome, Barbara. You're a Lee Townley too. You're registered as my name, so I'm sorry I missed you. And
oh, yeah. How did I?
Long story. My bad. But Jen and I are going to talk after the meeting and we're going to fix this. So, I am going to ask Jackie one more time if she would like to say anything before we move on.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi. Thanks for humoring me. Nice to see everybody. Happy New Year. I've got district advisory at 7 and I'm just juggling some work, so I'll be brief. I don't know, have we actually got participants in the meeting? I know we've got some good district folk here. I can't see, do we have an
I
audience?
believe we do have parents, and it's being broadcast on Facebook as well. And I think Jen
Okay,
is
great.
monitoring those questions, but we do have some parents.
Marvelous. Okay. Well, hi, everyone. I'm Jackie. Hello. I'm Jackie Luscombe. I'm the chair of ESE Advisory. So thanks to Lee, who organizes these meetings. She's got a great evening lined up for you. And for all the speakers and district folks, thank you so much for all the support you give us. I don't really have too many announcements. I just wanted to encourage people who don't already, if you're not already a member of our ESE Advisory Facebook page or this committee's Facebook page, please do join, because we share and trade a lot of information on there. Advice, support, news and district updates. And we like to hear back from you folks too with some of the issues that you are concerned about or want to hear more about or need advice upon, future speaker topics for all of our meetings. So do join us. It's Broward ESE Advisory Council.com is our website, and same for our Facebook page, Broward ESE Advisory. And I see Diane is on here, and I was wondering if Diane might just be able to quickly add on to something I wanted to bring up. But I know I've had a number of concerns from parents this week about semester 2 starting next week, and they're being given, a number of parents have received, as per the state governor's order, notification if their child is not deemed to be making adequate academic progress, and therefore the district has to recommend that they return to school. We've been keen to also assure people that are worried by this that they have a choice. It's always down to the parent's choice. So if your school recommends to you that they feel that your child would do better being back in brick and mortar campus, but you don't feel comfortable with them going back to campus, you have the right to say no. Equally, if the school is offering that and you're up for it, feel free to ask your school any questions. But Diane, I've been trying to get out of the district any information with the criteria on which these determinations have been made, because there has been some shock and dismay by a number of parents, not only through our social media. I've had contacts, a number of our board members have had contacts. Advocates are hearing from their clients saying, well, what the heck, my kid's got all A and B grades, my kid's made honor roll, or that their kid is even, has got on top of things lately and feeling proud of themselves. And then they get a letter saying you're not making adequate academic progress. I've been asking for the criteria because it's clearly more than just grades. I know they've been supplied to principals, and I think we'd appreciate as parents having those too.
So as you know, the executive order from our governor stated that we were to invite students back. And so we developed some different things that, and I don't have the exact criteria in front of me, so I can't speak to it specifically, but beyond that, schools are going to make independent decisions about, we had to do some kind of blanket communication, because then schools are following up with individual families. So if families have any questions, I highly recommend that they call their school, because they are really the only one who know the details about that specific students. But we did want to give the opportunity to all of our students with disabilities to come back to school if that's where they think their child learns best. So we welcome them back, we want them back if the parent decides that they learn best that way. So we are, we want the door to be open though, if that's what they want. So that's why I think that there's a little bit of confusion, it's difficult to do, a mass communication. And the schools are calling individual families and having discussions with them about the specific needs of their child, and completely respecting the parent's decision on where they think they want their child to receive their education. So that's kind of where they're at. So it's hard to answer any individual questions about a particular child, but we certainly recommend that you call the school, because they are the ones who have the best information to help you with that decision. And we know that we have families that feel strongly about remaining remote, and there's no problem with that whatsoever. But we also want them to know that in the event that they don't feel that's working for them, that the doors are open and that we welcome them back.
Okay, thank you. Principals have been supplied with criteria, and I think parents would appreciate having them. So I get what you're saying about individual children. Of course, it's going to be different from child to child as to which were the criteria that particular child met. But there is dismay if those parents who've been on top of their kids' grades all semester 1, they've got A's or even if they haven't got A's or B's, but they have felt that their child is getting along. There haven't been teacher concerns over and above, you know, usual communications. But particularly those folks who thought their kids were making progress, and that, you know, your grades in Pinnacle are some indicator of that, to not. We were wanting to know, what are the other areas that are being assessed, that the kids are being assessed on for meeting this definition. And I know it's individual for each kid, but we must have a kind of subset of criteria beyond just grades. And I think informing people of what those were might have ironed out some of the initial dismay last night, because of course people have been having to call schools this morning. That could have saved a lot of phone traffic on schools for one thing, but also just the kind of communication confusion over it, I think.
Right. And when a large district, it's always a struggle to do that kind of communication, especially when people need individual information about their particular child, because the answer is different based on the needs of the child. So I'm just going to strongly encourage, if anybody on this call has specific questions, I'm happy to try to field them as best I can. If I can't answer them, we're happy to provide follow-up tomorrow with our teams. And, you know, there is, you know, and like I said, it's just difficult because it could be attendance. It could be the child's not attending that way.
That's what I'm asking, Diane. What are the sector? I'm not saying asking you to say, you know, Freddie Smith over here, it was this criteria. I'm asking you to name for us, if you can. I think it would help folks to know. What are those? Okay, so you've just said attendance is another one, and we know grades.
I just say it could be social emotional. It could be any variety of ways that we support children. So when we narrow it down to just grades, that's not necessarily a complete picture of children. So, so I can't really lay out all that criteria. I don't have that in front of me, or anything that I even have it on my email or anywhere right now. So I'm just going to offer to answer anybody's individual questions if they have them. And, you know, as schools are calling, I think it'll paint a clearer picture to families. Is there anyone that has any questions for me that I'd be happy to answer before we start our presentation?
They weren't people from this group who contacted me. So I was just hoping to be able to spread the information that the district has to our parent community.
Right. So Jackie, it's always best that they contact us directly so that we can give them that information and support them. We have teams that support every single school, and we're more than happy to reach out and give them the support that they need. So please feel free to refer them to us. We love hearing from them, and we're always happy to give them that individualized support that they need.
Okay.
I'm going to stay on the whole meeting because I'm looking forward to our presentation. And then if there's any questions later in the meeting, I'm happy to answer them as well. But I'll turn it back to you, Lee.
Lee, sorry, I'm seeing Jen Gray has a question, but she's on the
I'm
phone.
sorry, Jen.
There's no hand raising ability for her.
Oh,
thanks for the time.
Yeah, no, I was telling her to type it into the chat, and then I'll ask Diane at the end of the meeting, so this way she gets her answer.
Lee, just a reminder to folks not to put their child's name. If they want to be specific, maybe they can get that information to you, and then you can forward it to us.
Okay, that'll work. Yeah, so try if you can try not use your child's name again, because this is being broadcast. That would be great.
And I have a form that we've been using in the other meetings, but I have to find it on my phone. So as soon as I find it, I'll pop it into the chat. And if anyone wants to put their personal information in there, that just goes to our office, and then that helps me know who to forward the information to, so they can reach out to you.
Okay, and I did see that we had a hand raised from Charmille Walters. I hope I said that right. If you want to go ahead and unmute and ask your question. And I don't know, Samantha, if you had your hand up as well. I saw your picture with the hand up. So
yeah,
we'll do Charmille first, because I saw hers first, and then we'll go to Samantha, to you.
Okay. Thank you for the floor. My name is Charmille Walters. My students call me Miss Charm. I am a cultural worker and a former teaching artist. One of my main clients was VSA Florida, now Arts for All, and I really enjoyed working with students with special needs. So I'm here basically to listen and to see how I can be of help. with whatever is going on during the pandemic. My main source of income was being a stagehand for live events. And since we're furloughed, for lack of a better term, I have some free time to see how I could be of assistance. I no longer teach for VSA Florida or anyone, but I have those skills. And so I'm here to listen and learn. I have been going through the Castle social emotional learning webinars. I've gotten a few certificates there as well. When I raised my hand, I was testing something out. Actually, somebody said they couldn't raise their hand, and I was just like, oh, I had the raise hand. So I think if you click on participant, then your choices for raising your hand, saying yes, no, go slower, come up if you click on participants or chat. So I was testing it out, and then I was like, oh, got called. But thank you for the floor.
Oh, no problem. No problem. Thank you for the information. Samantha, go ahead. You were next. So we'll, and I know where all these things are on Zoom. So go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question for Diane. I was just curious about speech. Like my daughter right now, she's in ESE. She's at home. She's doing wonderful at home, no problems whatsoever. But her teacher is going to be going back to school. So we're not sure yet if she's going back or not, my daughter. But if she's doing speech online, would she be doing speech online at school, or will it be like one-on-one with the teacher? Like, how does that work?
So tell me again, she's currently where?
She's at home.
And that's working, and you want to remain at home?
Everything's working great.
All's
It's just that they're forcing her teacher to go back, and her teacher has underlying health issues. And I actually went today. I first wrote a letter to the Broward County. I wrote a letter to Ramsey, and then I went and spoke to the principal in person today with another letter, just trying to get him to understand that it's just ridiculous for her to be going back, because right now, the four of us, the four, families and I, everything's working great. We actually became a really close family. We all enjoy coming on every morning and talking and just being with our kids. And she's being forced to go back now. So my question is, if like we do decide to put her back in school, will she be doing one-on-one with the speech teacher at school, or will it still be online with her computer?
It's hard for me to answer that just because there's so many parameters.
Okay.
I'm sure there's other students in her speech group. So schools are having to make some complex decisions right now as we're waiting to find out exactly what families want to do. Samantha, so it's, if the online is working, for her and she's remaining at home and she's been getting speech that way, then she's going to continue to get speech that way right now. And then if you choose to come back, we just have some decisions to make. And I'm a former principal, so I know that there's a lot of different parameters we have to consider. We have to consider the number of kids back, who might be in the speech group, who might be coming, who might not be coming. Like there's a lot of different things to figure out. So chances are, if you have 4 families that are involved in your class, I'm so excited to hear how well it's going and how connected you've all become. One of the great things I hear from schools is that now they've gotten to know the teachers so much better because they see them so much more often. And that's been really exciting. A lot of our speech therapists are thrilled because the parents know exactly the type of work that they're doing and can practice it, and kids are making phenomenal progress. So I call it our COVID benefits. None of us expected this to happen, but we have to capitalize on what's happening and make the very best of it. And it sounds like you and the families from your class have done exactly that. And I'm thrilled to hear that.
Like we actually whenever there's a project due, because Miss Lena tries to do the stuff with the kids, like we've been making books and doing a lot of art and craft stuff. So we all get in on it. We all help each other print stuff out. We actually go drop it off to everybody's houses. Like we're actually like a very tight family. So it's really sad that it's about, she has to go back. The teacher's got to be going back now because she's aggravated too, because she doesn't understand what's going to happen and everything. So we're all just trying, be there for her and just do the best we can.
Yeah, and then chances are, I can't guess, but she may just be in her classroom, but still teaching you guys remotely if everybody's remaining that way. But I don't want to guarantee that because I don't know the families or what decisions that they're making. And I want to truly have the utmost respect for everybody and what their needs are. And understand that all of our families have different circumstances and different things. And lots of our kids are being successful, but we wanted to open the door and give them the opportunity to come back, because a lot of our ESE students feel that, also families also feel that they would do best face-to-face with a teacher. So we want to respect, under these circumstances that we can't control, that we're in a pandemic, we want to respect everybody's individual needs and do the very best we can to try to, you know, meet them where they are and what their needs are right now. So it's complicated answer just because there's so many parameters, and each school is going to have to deal with the number of students they have, the number of teachers they have, the scheduling issues that they have. And, you know, there's just too many factors to try to second guess what, you know, but the possibilities are she could just continue remote speech as well, you know.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If there's nobody else waiting to ask a question, is there Lee? I'm sorry, just before I go, Jen Gray has a question. She's on her phone, so she can't type it into a chat box.
Okay.
And her question is, and again, I'm sorry, this goes back to what I'm trying to press. Who are parents meant to even reach out to at their school? Because we're having teachers telling us they haven't been part of the decision-making process. We've had teachers express surprise to us at seeing the list of students who have been recommended for return to campus. And those teachers themselves, who know the students the best, are surprised. So who is it who parents are meant to reach out to? And I still feel some more information for folks so that they understand. Obviously, the individual discussion has to be had at the school, but it's not clear who with and who has even made these decisions. And again, based on what, because it's not the teachers.
So Jen, I'm sorry that you can't, you know, put your things in the chat and speak to us directly, but I'm happy to follow up with you tomorrow and to talk to you about your individual situation. And I'll give you some, you know, we'll discuss it there and we'll figure out what the next steps are to help you feel comfortable with that conversation.
Okay, so Diane, generally, if other people have that question though, is then it's school by school, like, I mean, who has made the decisions at each school? What should we're ESE advisory, so we're trying to advise as well, and the information comes from you folks, but it's kind of a little difficult to get that information, and it would just help if you have any information beyond just, or talk to your school, because you're going to get a whole bunch of individual questions about it, but it might be something we can just answer and say, okay, well, here's who made the decision and based on what.
Well, a plan was written by the district and submitted to the governor. And so within that plan, you may be able to find the information that it is you're looking for, but I think it's going to be a variety of information that's in there. And again, I just think that when you give generalized statements of criteria, a lot of people are going to feel that that doesn't match for them. And let me give you an example that's not an ESE example. For students who are our ESOL students with a second language, our English language learners, if you were considered to be a level A, which is kind of our newcomers, our students who have very little English and are just new to the situation, we invited all of those students back. There are some of those students who are making progress, just like our ESE students, but we wanted the opportunity to open the door to them and invite them back. So it might be when they have the individual conversation, it might be that we say, hey, you're doing great the way things are and you want to remain at home, we're going to support you remaining at home. So I just keep going back to, I know you want me to give you a specific criteria. I don't actually have it in front of me, so I can't really do that right now. But I think part of it is we expanded it so we would make sure that we included any possible students who may benefit from that opportunity. And that was the most important thing, is that it was more inclusive than just narrowing that criteria. And that's why it's pretty broad and open-ended. But ultimately, because it's a parent choice, we're respecting those individual decisions. And so ultimately it isn't completely in the hands of the parents of what they decide in the end. But Jen, I'll be happy to follow up with you, Jen Gray.
Lee, do you want Christina to go ahead and get started?
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I was waiting for everybody to finish before I came back on. I'm sorry.
Okay.
And I know from being on the teacher end that my school's a little bit different because everybody probably is in, a different situation than from what everybody, other schools are. But I know that anybody who's listening, please, if you have questions, contact the schools. Diane, you'll be happy. Your department will be happy to answer any questions if they have them. So, please do that. I don't have any letters to compare any information to, so I can't say. But I know for some of the students at my school, there were certain things as far as grades, as far as not attending, those kinds of things. And then some, and then next, I think we're going to focus next week or the next week or two on some of our achieving students who we would just like to invite back to offer the services as well. So I know for us, it's being done in stages, but we have 108 students. It's not very big.
Yeah.
But yeah. But I know
that's excellent. That's excellent, Lee, because that's exactly what it is. But we may invite students who we just think would do better in school, regardless if they met that criteria. And that's why it's somewhat open-ended, because just like you, if you at your school, even though your school's a little bit smaller compared to some of our other schools, we're trying to leave it as open-ended as possible so that we have the opportunity to bring people back in any way possible if we think they'll benefit from it.
I think it's the phrase, Diane, adequate. Your child is not making adequate academic progress. That's not just inviting back people who might benefit. That's what's jarring with some people. Obviously, parents want to know if their child isn't making adequate academic progress, but they want to know, okay, so show me what is it if it's not grades? And again, I accept from child to child, it's individual, but I think it would be fair for us to have shared with us what the criteria are. They've been shared with principals, and I think that should be filtered down to parents. For some reason, it's proving very difficult to get, and that's my point. I've got to hop off to another meeting, but thank you for everything. And Lee, thank you for letting me gate crash, and good luck with your meeting tonight. Thanks, everyone.
Good luck with the meeting coming up.
And I just wanted to add that adequate academic progress is what the governor's identification was. And so what the schools did is what the district did is it just took a very broad brush so that we could open the doors to as many students as possible. And I do think the terminology is challenging, but I think it's the district's interpretation of what the governor has put out. So it's not, he didn't say take a broad brush and invite everybody back who wants to come back exactly that way. But I think Broward County wants to honor parents' wishes. So even if you're not making even if you are making it, we still want to open the door to you if that's what's right for you and your family. So I do think that the wording is a little challenging, and I certainly respect that Jackie's representing that opinion of the of the different families that she's spoken to. But that's why I think it's a little bit complex. But I think it's like interpreting the governor's words and then trying to also honor everybody who wants to come back or that we think we need to reach out to just to make sure everything's going well. So I'll stop talking because I want to leave for you to take it back, and I'll turn off my camera so we can get right to the presentation whenever you're ready.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that, Diane. And moving on to our next part of the presentation, to the next part of our program, I want to welcome back Christina Reyes. She is, I'm reading this from my phone because I don't want to get it wrong. She's a district coordinator with psychological services with the ESLS division. Beth will tell you I never get titles right, and I'm so sorry, but I hope I got that right. Christina, are you there?
I'm here, and you got my title perfectly right.
Yay! I had to read it. I'm not gonna lie, I had to read it. I'm gonna start writing them all down. But thank you so much for being here tonight. And I just want to say before you start, one of the things that we wanted to do with the EBD committee was to include information for parents of children with ADHD. So if you know of a parent, if you're on tonight, you know of a parent who didn't see the program, but would like to hear what Christina has to say, please, please, please encourage them to join the Facebook page, the ESC advisory page, so that they can watch this information. They can watch the program and get the information that we have here, because I've heard it before and it's great, and I can't wait to hear the COVID stuff. So, so Christina, I'm going to turn it over to you and turn off my camera and take it away. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. No, thank you. Like you, I'm more familiar with Microsoft Teams, so I'm going to try to share my screen, and hopefully some of you will be able to.
I'm so used to looking at the bottom and seeing everybody's initials, and that's why I'm getting so lost. But I know what you mean.
Are you able to see my screen?
Christina? I can see it
Okay.
perfectly.
Yeah, we can.
Fantastic. That's just what I needed, is some confirmation that it was up. So again, I'm Christina Reyes. I'm one of the district coordinators for the Psychological Services Department. I do want to give you a little more about my background. Prior to that, I was a district school psychologist at our schools, conducting evaluations for students with disabilities, students who are gifted. I was also part of the collaborative problem-solving teams at my schools to help identify students who had needs and what interventions would work for them, whether it's behavioral or academic, etc. And before that, I was an ESC teacher. So I taught kindergarten through third grade, multiple disabilities. It was a VE classroom, a resource room. So that's a little bit about my background. I'm also a mother of two. So like you, I am at home and I have children that are right now under control. But if you hear, some stuff in the background, you know what that's all about. So thank you for attending tonight. And I hope that this information is helpful to you. Actually, you know what, before I go on to the slide, I hope some of you are able to use the chat, and then let me see if I can view the chat. Let's start with that. I was able to view the chat until I started sharing. Well, some of you may be able to unmute, but if you have the chance to unmute, I want you to just think for a moment. We're going to have two portions of this presentation. The first, as Lee mentioned, is about students with attention difficulties and how we can identify, but also assist them. And then the second portion I thought was important to include is just talking about COVID, strategies of coping with COVID, how to help our children through COVID, and just reflecting a little bit about how it's impacted our lives and our children's lives. But before we do that, I wanted to ask if you can just give me about a word or two of what you know about students with ADHD. Just a word or two, if anybody's willing to unmute and be brave, and just give me oh, I'm able to see the chat on this side. So either on the chat or on mute. Go ahead.
Basically, they're easily distracted.
Distracted.
As far as the hyperactivity part, they can't sit still. The ADD part of it is the attention deficit. They're bright in their own way. And I guess
Okay,
they
so
lack they lack certain social skills.
Okay, so I heard some difficulties with attention, some impulsivity, it's bright in some ways. That's positive. I like to hear that. Ms. Cody, I think did you want to share something? I think you're muted.
Oh no, let me go back to mute.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Well,
okay,
I mean,
so
his speech therapist did tell me at one time when they kept trying to say that he was, ADHD or that was a part of it. She said it's not always in the form of them moving around and not being able to sit still. Sometimes it's like the lady said, the complete lack of focus or something like that.
Daydreaming or dozing off a little.
Yes. Zoning out. Yes.
Zoning out. Yep.
Behavioral issues.
I'm gonna mute now.
I wanted to say a lot of the students that I've experienced or family members with ADHD is that they're often incredibly creative because they're not limited by boundaries. They think out the box and they sometimes come up with the most amazing ideas and great critical thinking. So I think they oftentimes have a great amount of energy and really get passionate about what they believe in. So I find that there's some amazing qualities of children and adults with ADHD that really we can capitalize on and celebrating their success.
Absolutely. So I always start this presentation in this manner because often, and I appreciate today, we have a lot more positive words and phrases and discussions about it, but often when I ask, give me some words to describe ADHD, there's a lot of negative connotation, right? Inattention, impulsive, lack of behavior and all that. All those being true, those are symptomatic of students with ADHD. But what I heard today too from each one of you is that it is a many splendored thing, right? Not each individual with ADHD is going to present the same. So we're going to explore that a little bit. So I just want to describe what is ADHD. ADHD is a medical condition. It has to be diagnosed by a medical professional. A psychologist can diagnose it if they're a licensed psychologist, and we, a school psychologist in the school system, we can evaluate for the characteristics but we still need a medical professional to make that diagnosis. So it's very important that we recognize it's a medical diagnosis like any other. It is characterized by 3 core symptoms, and you all mentioned some of these symptoms: inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. They're not all always present, like Ms. Cody mentioned, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. Children do display more significant symptoms than other children their age, and I mention that because all children at some point or another can be impulsive, all children at some point or another can be inattentive, and all children at some point or another can be hyperactive. So that's very typical of children. What we do when we are looking for a student who has characteristics of ADHD, we're comparing that student to students their age, typical students their age, and how children typically interact in the classroom. These children tend to have a higher level of either inattention, impulsivity, hyperactivity, or all of the above. That's how we diagnose or look for ADHD. These symptoms tend to interfere with their behaviors at home, at school, or other settings, or with peers. So for a student to be diagnosed with ADHD, it has to be present in one or more settings, and it has to be for a period of longer than 6 months. So a student can't just be inattentive all of a sudden today, and all of us, call them ADHD. There has to be a history of this difficulty, and it has to impact something, a behavior at home, school, or among peers. And somebody mentioned difficulty with socialization. Sometimes that becomes a factor. We'll talk about that in a bit. This happens to be the most common reason students are referred in school for things like, for example, RTI or for evaluations. It affects about 3 to 7% of elementary school symptoms, and some of these symptoms can be first recognized as early as pre-K. So it's most common. This is the reason why students are being referred for difficulties with attention and concentration. So, as we talked about the many splendored thing, ADHD has 3 different types, and many people speak of it in one way. It's ADHD, students with ADHD all kind of fit this one package, and they do not. So ADHD, there's predominantly an inattentive type, and that's what was mentioned earlier. This is a student who just has difficulty concentrating, difficulty paying attention. They're not necessarily impulsive, they're not fidgety, they're not moving around. These are sometimes the students that we miss because they are just sitting there, they're not misbehaving, but they're not able to concentrate. They don't look like they're not able to concentrate, but they're not able to. The other type is predominantly hyperactive impulsive type. These are the students that we tend to see, right, and notice easier because they're actually having that difficulty staying in their seat, keeping control of their body and their movements. So those are the students that are most often kind of attended to first. You notice them first. And then there's ADHD combined type. So it's students who have both, who have that difficulty attending and concentrating, but also that hyperactivity and impulsivity. So there's those 3 different types. And something important to note about those types is that girls are most likely diagnosed with the inattentive type. They're typically diagnosed with the inattentive type, while boys are more likely diagnosed with either the hyperactive, impulsive, or combined type. And some may argue that that's just how boys and girls are, right? That girls are a little more calm, boys are a little more hyperactive, but that's not entirely the case. So difficulties associated with ADHD. Students who have ADHD have difficulties primarily in 3 areas. One of them is academic. I think that we can kind of foresee that. Behavioral, right? They have difficulty behaving or attending. And problems with peer relationships. That's the one that goes a little unnoticed and a little unattended. So I'm going to dig a little deeper into that in a moment, but we're going to talk about all 3. So some examples of academic difficulties. These students, and somebody mentioned it on this meeting a minute ago, they're bright. They actually have the ability for the most part. What they have difficulty doing is performing. And we call that work productivity, being actually able to do the work and show their work. But it's very likely that they have the skills and the knowledge and the cognitive ability to do it. They just can't produce it. We're going to talk a little bit about why that is. Up to 1/3 of these children will repeat a grade during their elementary school year. So because they're unable to perform, right, they're unable to meet the criteria that's needed to move on to the next grade. So unfortunately, up to 1/3 of these children do repeat grades in elementary school. Academic underachievement probably represents a problem in performing, again, than true problems in learning. So some of these students get referred because they're not doing well, they have failing grades, parents may think they have a learning disability, but then when they're assessed one-on-one with no distractions, they can perform, they have the skills. So the difficulty is teasing that out, is making sure this isn't a skill deficit, that it's likely a performance deficit, that's what we call it. So academic difficulties usually seem to result from a combination of two things. Three things. Insufficient attention, they're not able to concentrate or pay attention. They're impulsive in their work habits, or careless, sometimes we call that too, in their work habits, where they are too fast. So a lot of these students, when I've done specifically math tests, and you give them like a list of addition problems and subtraction, they're mixed, you know, they go through them so quickly that they're adding on all their questions instead of adding and subtracting when needed. So it's that attention to detail that becomes a challenge for them and makes their work production a challenge as well. Sometimes they can be disruptive in the classroom, and what is disruptive for me may be different for what's disruptive for you. But for some teachers, I was okay with the student getting up so long as they were doing their work, so they could stand and do their work all day long. Other teachers ask their students to sit all the time, and that for these children can be very challenging and very difficult. So we're going to talk about that ability to have that flexibility to stand and move. So sometimes these behaviors can become disruptive. At least 25% of children with ADHD have significant learning problems as well. So as I mentioned before, the majority of these students have the skills and the abilities, but are challenged with their ability to produce the work or show their work. Some students, though, 25% of them, also have learning difficulties. So they have a combination of behavioral challenges, right? Challenges with actually what we call executive functioning, being able to focus and attend and plan and organize, but as well as that, they have difficulties with learning. So we just discussed academic difficulties, and we're going to talk a little bit about behavioral difficulties. So for some students with ADHD, they have difficulties with aggression or oppositional behavior, and also insufficient self-control. So that becomes quite challenging. And part of what occurs with these students is because they cannot demonstrate self-control, you know, they're often getting into trouble, and it's a little bit of a cycle, right? I can't control myself. I get in trouble. Now I'm frustrated because I tried to control myself, but I couldn't. And it's this like ongoing cyclical thing. Sometimes they engage in fighting or lying or stealing. I think this is painting kind of a negative picture of ADHD, but it's expressing different challenges the students with ADHD have. Children who are inattentive may be perceived as blatantly ignoring the teacher. That's really important to know, because if a student has difficulty attending, they may appear in the classroom as if they're purposefully not attending to the teacher or not responding to the teacher, when in actuality, they're just distracted. So any one of us here on this call at some point or another has lost focus when you're in a conversation with somebody or you're in the middle of doing something. I mean, I can tell you 100 times that's happened to me with my own children when I'm in the middle of cooking something and they're trying to tell me a story and I zone out for a minute. I'm not purposely ignoring my child. I am distracted by what's going on. So for these students, unfortunately, it occurs more often than it does for, you know, a typical student. And so it can be perceived as a student who's ignoring. Children with ADHD sometimes have an elevated risk for other difficulties like oppositional defiant disorder or conduct disorder, depression or anxiety. And I don't want to paint, again, this negative picture. The point is that we have to notice these things so that we can intervene in these things. And that I'm headed into the intervening part of it in a moment. The other thing that we need to look for is how it affects their social emotional development. So a lot of these students begin to internalize the feeling that I can't do well and I'm not good enough, right? Because they can't attend, they can't focus, they can't produce, and they're feeling quite frustrated because once again, and I want to go back to the very first slide, this is a medical condition. This is something that that child cannot control. It's no different than many of us on this call who either wear glasses or contact lenses in order to see. I have a condition that does not allow me to see. You can offer me $1 million to read something from 5 feet away without my glasses or my contacts. Boy, I need $1 million. I could use it, but I cannot, no matter how much I try, no matter how much I want it, because I have a condition that doesn't allow me to read from 5 feet away without my glasses. So that's something we have to continuously remind ourselves when we're working with students with ADHD, that this is a challenge for them. And being faced with this challenge on a daily basis without succeeding can then become an emotional toll that takes on them. So we need to be able to identify and know these things so that we can work with them. One of the biggest challenges, and I think this is the biggest challenge that becomes a little forgotten or unattended, is problems with peer relationships. So because they have difficulties attending and concentrating, organizing their thoughts, for some of them, their impulsive nature can be bothersome to some children. That's how they perceive the behaviors. They don't understand it or know how to deal with it. So peer rejection can occur as a result. And children, studies have shown that children who have socially appropriate friends and positive relationships have greater success in life. I think that's something that we can all kind of acknowledge, right? The better you are at building relationships, the more successful you can become in both the school and the workplace and your future. So this is a skill that for many of these students, we have to teach. This is not a skill that is coming naturally to them if they're having these difficulties. So we need to discuss that, attend to it, and work with them. So I think it's important that when we talk about ADHD, we understand something that we call executive functions. ADHD is something that really impacts us in our frontal lobe. That's the front part of our brain that controls these executive functions. And these are the things you'll see when you start learning about executive functioning. Oh, that's what's happening, right, with my child or my student with ADHD. So I'm gonna just kind of go around this little circle and talk about these executive functioning. So overall, the big definition is these are the skills that drive the way that we behave, how we control our emotions, how we manage our impulses, and how we deal with situations that can be challenging. So flexible thinking is one. We have to be able to adjust our behavior to unexpected changes. Many of us in our daily lives have unexpected changes. We have all just experienced in the past year the most unexpected change we could have ever have predicted, which is COVID. And we've had to, through force, right, become flexible and shift in order to cope with this change. So that's a huge unexpected change that we've all experienced. But every day in our lives, we have small unexpected changes and we have to kind of change gears and shift. And this is an ability that's very challenging for students with ADHD. Working memory is another one. That's the ability to hold something in your memory for a short period of time in order to compute or do something that you need to do. So an example of how we use working memory in our daily lives is when you're kind of calculating something in your mind, right? You're adding or subtracting or multiplying things. You have to kind of remember the numbers in your head and carry the one and all that in order to solve something. So that's working memory. And for some children, this is very challenging. I can't hold these things in my head for a short period of time, even for a few minutes. And we have assessments that look into, whether or not a student has these difficulties. Self-monitoring is self-awareness. It's being able to monitor myself and know how I'm doing. So right now, as I'm presenting to you, I'm monitoring. Are these people nodding their heads? Are they listening to me? Do they seem to be attentive? Okay, I think I'm doing all right. But if not, I need to do a check-in. So we all have moments of self-monitoring, and we have to teach our children this self-awareness. Are you realizing how your behavior is impacting the other person? That's really hard for some kids. I'm not realizing that this is making you feel anxious or upset or disappointed or what have you. Planning and prioritizing, so setting goals. We all have to do that on a day. We talk about to-do lists all the time. How many of you do a to-do list and never get to it or never finish it? But planning is a part of life, right? We have to plan and organize and prioritize. That's really important. And for students with ADHD, sometimes they prioritize the wrong things. So sometimes I had one student, she loved to organize her desk. She was the neatest student in the whole wide world, but she always chose the wrong time to organize her desk, in the middle of reading or math or what have you. So we had to set a time in the day where she was allotted time to organize her desk, because that was just something she just really wanted to do. But I had to help her prioritize. I had to help her plan when she was going to do that thing that she really wanted to do, which is a good thing. It's a positive thing to keep your desk organized. But this is a challenge for students with ADHD. Task initiation, like getting started on a task, can be a challenge. So some of these students, you'll give them an assignment, you'll walk away, 2 minutes later, you come back and they haven't even begun or put their name on their paper. So task initiation is a challenge and requires maybe some prompting and reminders. Organization, keeping track of things, whether that's physically or mentally. Some of these students have difficulty when they're speaking or when they're writing, because that requires organization of thoughts, right? When I'm saying a story or I'm writing an essay, for example, I got to organize my thinking. How am I going to present this information in a manner that can be understood? So that is sometimes a challenge. We talked about impulse control. I think everyone knows what that is. It's thinking before I act. Some of these students, they do something and then afterwards they're like, I'm so sorry, I don't know why I did that, you know, and that's because it's what I call the filter. We all have that filter, that we have this impulse to do something, but we know maybe we shouldn't do that right now. And we have that filter that stops us. For some of these students, that filter just doesn't exist. They do it and they know it's really not something they should be doing, so they're immediately remorseful of it. And that becomes the challenge. But that goes back to that self-awareness. So kind of knowing when you're gonna do something before you do it, and talking yourself through that. And lastly, emotional control. And that's really, really important, is keeping your feelings in check, not completely melting down at the first sign of some disappointment. So emotional control is something that they really do struggle with at all also. So you might have a student with ADHD doesn't struggle with all these things. They may struggle with 2 or 3 or 4 of these things, but it's educating yourself about these things, knowing that these are the things that they have difficulties with, and identifying which one of these is my student having difficulty, or which one of these is my child having difficulty with, and how do I help them with this? That's what's most important. So we have that's why we're here, right? To educate ourselves on these things, to know what it is that we need to look for. So let's talk about how do we link assessing these things. So I can tell you this, as a school system, you know, we can evaluate these things, we can identify if these are the weaknesses, but now we have to tie those things to interventions. So we know that a student has ADHD, we know the student has struggles. What do? I have a little 5-year-old who decided to visit this presentation. Speaking of impulse control. So linking assessment to intervention. One of the things is a functional behavioral assessment, and that can be used to determine why a behavior occurs. So for many of us in our schools, we are assessing why this student is choosing to do this. So why is my daughter choosing to come next to me? Because she wants my attention. That's why she's doing that. That's the function of her behavior right now. So I have to give her a moment of attention so that she recognizes you got the attention, but now you got to walk away. We're going to roll with the punches tonight, friends. The next one is rewards-based interventions. So how do we determine or set some standards for our children? We all work for money. Let's be real. I don't work for free. Okay, so we all work for something. There's some benefit to the work that I'm putting in. And for some of these children, that intrinsic motivation of working, so working and doing well, is enough motivation for them to do what they need to do in school. For some, we need to up the ante and create more rewards. So we call these things a token economy. I know in my classroom, I had a ticket system where, you know, you did your homework, you got a ticket. You walked into the classroom, quietly sat in your desk, you got a ticket, et cetera, et cetera. And they would earn these little tickets, and at the end of the week, we'd have a treasure chest. You go in and you get a treasure chest item, depending on how many tickets you had. That's called a token economy system. You're earning points for the things that you're expected to do, that you need to do. And then you can kind of turn those points for something later. And we could do that at home as parents. We could do a chore chart, and they can earn points for their chore charts. And it doesn't have to be a monetary item that they get. I mean, you just saw my 5-year-old just pop up in the window because what she wants is attention. So what's the best token economy system I can set up for her? She can earn time with mommy. We can have playtime or drawing time or what have you. So that's an idea for how we work to kind of get them to do the things that we need them to do, while also having them earn and get something that they want. Social skills training is definitely something that I think, lose sight of with students with ADHD. And as I mentioned before, peer relationships become quite a challenge when they're very impulsive, when they lack that self-awareness, when they can't see how their behaviors impact another person. All these things are a challenge, so we need to talk them through that. So what do you think happened just now when you were with Johnny, and Johnny got frustrated with you because you kept taking the ball away? And you have to walk them through that scenario and teach them strategies on how next time when you're playing with Johnny, you have to recognize Johnny and you need to take turns so that Johnny's not frustrated with you and Johnny wants to play with you again. So that's kind of social skills training, is how do we set up these situations and walk them through them. organizational skill development, so maintaining a homework log, setting daily schedules or chore charts. Those are all important things because, as I mentioned earlier, their organizational skills in their own mind is so challenging that you need to kind of put things down visually for them. And that's why we talk a lot in schools about visual schedules, like making a schedule where everything's kind of visual for students so that they can kind of organize their own thoughts. Behavior interventions that involve communication between home and school are going to be the most important things. So that's something that I push for, I strive for, I recommend that interventions be done in a consistent manner where both home and school are communicating, because when the child sees that everyone's on your side and we're all working as a team together to help you, I mean, there's nothing more important to that child to realize that we're all here for your benefit and to help you. So any intervention that we do design, whether it be at home or at school, that we communicate. And I always encourage parents, tell me what works for you at home. What does that child respond to? What do they love? What do they enjoy? I had one student whose mom told me, my daughter loves Lord of the Dance. She just loves it. I don't know if anybody on this call knows what Lord of the Dance is, but it's like those Irish jig dancers, and they kind of like jump up and down with their legs. It's like a special Irish dance. I knew nothing about it, but guess what? I educated myself on it because I knew that that's what I could get to have this student work with me. So my thing is whatever works. Anything that I can do to help this child succeed, let's do it. So if you as a parent know something that's like a good trick, let your teachers know, let your child's teacher know, because that is ultimately extremely helpful. The two most research treatment options for students with ADHD are psychostimulant medication and behavioral interventions. Notice the word and, it's not or. Now, I'm not a medical professional, I am a mental health professional, so I cannot diagnose ADHD. I can only evaluate whether or not the characteristics are present in a child and recommend what is needed in the school setting, because that's my role as a school psychologist. But there is plenty of research out there that supports that for some of these students, medication is beneficial. That is a parent choice, that is a family choice, and that should be done with a consultation of a medical professional. But it is my responsibility to share with you what the research does support and share. Lastly, as a caution, it's important that we rule out all other explanations before we diagnose a student with ADHD or attention problems. Believe it or not, there are very common things that may appear like ADHD. So a student with a hearing issue, a student who may be deaf or hard of hearing, may present as a student who's not paying attention or listening, but clearly it's because they can't hear. So, hearing screenings and vision screenings, all these things are very important first steps. And then, of course, for some students who have learning disabilities, they could also present as having difficulties with attention because they can't attend to something they don't understand. So a lot of other things need to be kind of looked at before one is diagnosed with ADHD, and there's many forms and ways of doing that. I just wanted to throw that out as a cautionary statement. Some proactive strategies that can be done in the classroom, preferential seating to reduce distractions. Many parents or teachers view that as being in the front of the classroom. That's not necessarily what that student needs. Preferential seating is what is most beneficial for that child, and how can that child attend better. For some students, being on the side of the classroom where they can actually stand up and not disturb other children, but they get that flexibility of standing up, that's the preferential seating that they need. So it really just depends on the child. Reducing and chunking assignments. Sometimes assignments are just too long, and really I could demonstrate the mastery of that skill in 5 questions instead of 10. So for some teachers or some students, we work with that and we modify those assignments. Using nonverbal cues. So instead of calling that student's name, Johnny, 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 and driving everybody crazy and calling way too much attention to one child, we talk about doing a hand gesture. So for one student, I used to go like, just put my hand up like that, or, for some putting it on my ear. And it was just something Johnny and I knew that when I do this, that means I need you to pay attention. Or just tapping them on their shoulder and walking away. So sometimes nonverbal cues, instead of calling their name over and over again, where the whole class is now looking at Johnny, that's probably a more beneficial way to get their attention. Extended time to complete assignments for some students is necessary. Their processing speed is extremely slow. takes them a long time to complete tasks, but they do them well. This is not helpful for those students that rush through assignments. There are students who rush through their assignments, they don't use their extended time, and then they're just sitting there for 20 or 30 minutes to waste that extended time. So it's really only intended for those students who really have slower processing speed, who take that extended time and actually perform well when given that extended time. That's what that extended time is for. Some children with ADHD require some additional services. So many of you here are parents of students with ADHD who are in the ESC program because they need that level of support. Some students with ADHD only need general education interventions, meaning the interventions that I can provide in the general education classroom alone that don't rise to the level of special education. And some children can be served through what's called a Section 504 plan, which is just through accommodations. So some of them may need some of these accommodations we talked about, like extended time or chunking or preferential seating, but they have no skill deficits. They have average reading and writing and math skills. They don't need any extra direct instruction in those areas. Their behaviors are under control. They just need a couple little accommodations to give them the access that they need to their education. And that could be simply served through a 504 plan. And I say that only to say, once again, what I said at the beginning is every student with ADHD is different. What they're going to need is different. Their circumstances are different. And that's how we have to kind of target it and look at it.
Christina, I just want to say we have a question when you're done.
Yes.
From Melissa Ramos. So it's about some of the stuff you're talking about now.
Sure,
so at the end, I just want to make sure that she gets her time to ask you her question. So
sure. I'm sorry that I don't know why I can't see the chat, so I apologize.
It was a private.
Oh, okay.
She texted out, and then we were answering back privately. But I just want to make sure that when you're done, just keep her in mind that she has some questions, especially pertaining to this.
Absolutely. At the end, I'll just open the floor for questions, and we can have Melissa go first, and then others can ask after. Sounds good?
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. I want to just, since most of you on the call are parents, I just want to talk about homework tips. Always have an identified place where homework is done. One of the biggest things we can do is set it up where all the materials are there. The biggest thing students get distracted by are supplies. So if they're getting up and you need a pencil, they get up and they need a eraser. Oh, and I need to get up and I gotta get scissors. Then I'm getting up, and as I'm walking to get what it is that I need, I'm now distracted by what's going on in the kitchen or what's going on in the family room, so forth. So set up your space for the child. It could even be, I know that many of us have limited space. I have limited space. What you're seeing is me sitting in a desk, quote unquote desk. It's a foldable table in the front of my home because that's the only space that I have. But what you could do is you set up a little basket with all the materials that's portable. And then depending on the space that's available that day, that little basket that's portable with all the materials they need goes with the child. So it doesn't have to be a set big old space, but at least the materials they have are set at the space that you give them. Decide on the best time to do homework. I always tell parents it really depends on your child. For some kids, it's best to do it as the moment that they get home before they start getting too relaxed. For others, they need a break before they get to doing their homework. For some, they need a snack before they do their homework. So you kind of have to assess your child and what works best for them, but find out what time is best and set that time. I think that's most important, is to set some sort of routine or schedule. Make plans for completing homework. Many of your students or your children have agendas, right, where they kind of have their tasks listed out. Having it out and using it as a checklist is helpful. Always remember to kind of help your child place the homework in the appropriate folder or notebook. I think one of the challenges that students with ADHD have is their organizational skills in some respects. And so they'll do their homework, but they'll leave it at home and then they don't get credit for it at school. So trying to find some established folders and notebooks where they can do these things so that they don't get lost. Cleaning off the desk or the workspace each day. This is a regular challenge for me and my 10-year-old. It's please clean out your space, because when you start again tomorrow, you don't want to be trying to catch up and figure out where your book is and where your notebook is. So that's something that I work on daily, but what we do is just prompt and help them set up their workspace. Give children something to look forward to. It's similar to what I said earlier. I don't work for free, right? I work to get paid. So children need something to look forward to. And so sometimes what you do is you set up the time for their homework. And once you're done with your homework, now you can go have TV time. Or you can go have your favorite snack, or you can go outside and play, or what have you. Knowing that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, right? Because homework can be challenging for many children. So you can also break it up. So that's my next bullet. Break it up, have some breaks in between, and let them build in choice for them. What task would they want to do first? So for some students, math is their thing. So let them start off with math. So they can start off with something that they enjoy, that's easy, and work their way to the harder one, or vice versa, whatever works for them. Start with reading and end with math if they want to end with something that they enjoy. So those are just a couple tips of things to do at home. There's plenty more. If you search on the internet, CHAD is a wonderful organization. So chad.org is a great place to go for resources for students with ADHD. What I want to share with you is a wonderful resource that was actually created by some of our school psychologist interns this school year, along with their supervisors. And this was way better, phenomenal kind of graphic work than I could do. So I'm very impressed by it myself. But this is how to boost your child's executive functioning during virtual learning. So I heard some of you talking about how your children are, engaging in virtual learning and succeeding in virtual learning, and you'd like to keep them that way. So this is a way to help you. And this is not necessarily just for virtual learning. A lot of these strategies are just helpful for home life and for homework. And I know it might be very hard for you to read, but what I'm going to do is, when this presentation is over, I'm going to send a copy of both the presentation and these documents, these forms, because these have live links. So these forms have actual live links that you can click on for resources, but I'm just going to give you a quick preview. So this one is for parents. And what it does is it breaks down the executive functioning areas that we discussed earlier, and it gives you kind of some strategies and tips for your child or for your student in those areas. So for example, for kids who have difficulty with time management, we have a visual timer here for you, because for some kids, time is not for some kids, time is an abstract thing. It's a thing that just passes, right? And we only see it as a concrete thing because we have a watch and we can read our watch and know when our time is passing. But how many of you have gotten so enthralled into something and then 20 minutes have passed and you're like, whoa, where did the time go? Because time can escape you. So what we have is a visual timer. I wish I have one for my daughter. I should have brought it so that I could show you. But basically, it shows red, and as the time starts ticking away, the red starts to go away. So she could visually see, this red is going away. She's 5. She does not know time. She does not get that yet. But she can see, if my red's going down, I don't have a lot of time left. So that's a good strategy to use. And I mentioned earlier, visual schedules, prioritizing tasks. So there's a couple other tips and tricks here too. For kids who have difficulty with independence or taking initiative, we have some resources here to help you create some rewards programs in your home or in the classroom. And we talked about that a little bit, those token economies where I give you tickets and you earn something. And then for kids with organizational difficulties, we have some visual supports, ways to write things down. I know many of us have these tricks, right, where we have a lot of Post-its that we write our notes on, or we highlight things in certain colors, whatever works for you. But visual supports are very helpful for those students who have difficulty with organization. And then on the back of the page, or the second part of the document, you have attention, self-regulation, planning, and prioritizing, and we have some other things for you there. Fidget tools for some kids. Play-Doh, holding Play-Doh in their hands while they're attending helps them. Being given the opportunity to move around and get up. I always recommend for students who have a lot of impulsivity and hyperactivity that they be enrolled in some sort of team sport, some sort of after-school sport, or maybe even karate or martial arts, something along those lines, because it kind of gets that energy out. It teaches them focus and concentration. So I always encourage families who have students with ADHD to enroll their kids in some extracurricular activity of something that they enjoy, because for most of the day they're struggling to be successful with either academics or behavior. Give them something that they're good at so that they can get that fulfillment in them. And then what we have on the back of the document, or the second page of the document, are some additional resources. And again, I know it's really tiny for you to see, but we have some resources for families that come from the Florida Association of School Psychologists. We have the organization CHAD that I mentioned earlier, which is an organization specifically for students with ADHD. We have some links to some great documents from the National Association of School Psychologists and so forth. So these are just great tools, and we have our very own Broward County Public Schools, and I heard somebody mentioning CASEL earlier. This is our SEL, our social emotional learning and mindfulness toolkit that we've developed in our district. I can't say we like me, I can't take credit for this, but our district has this wonderful toolkit for parents and things that you could do at home. Social emotional learning ties with executive functioning. That's a portion of it. Being self-aware, knowing my emotions, identifying my emotions and controlling them. Those are all aspects of social emotional learning. So these are just some toolkits and resources for you as parents. I also have a document that was created for teachers, and it's very similar. It's broken up into the executive functioning skills and some digital resources and strategies for teachers to use. I'm happy to share that as well, because these are some things that you still, could still be practical for you. So, providing the child with a checklist and a lot of things we just discussed. I'm not going to go line by line with them, but I'm just going to give you some, I'm going to pull out some of them, like the feelings thermometer. So we talked about that, self-awareness, identifying how I'm feeling before I blow up or before I have a meltdown. Virtual classroom prizes. So again, that reward system, how do I work towards the rewards? And this one's virtual, right? So we have a lot of our students and a lot of your children are at home. So how do we reward the children who are at home? It's hard for you to read that, but it's virtual lunch with the teacher. So the teacher can have virtual lunch they can pick the class game to play a game. They could do show and tell, like bring your puppy to the screen, those kind of things. And then there's just a couple of other great resources for students with executive functioning difficulties and so forth. So again, I'll share this with Lee so she can send that out to you all. And then we're going to take a little break, a mind break, before we shift into COVID. And the mind break is just going to open the floor for anybody here to share with me in one word how your experiences have been in the time of COVID. During the pandemic, dealing with virtual learning or sending your kids to school with masks, whatever your circumstances are, try to describe your feelings surrounding the changes your life has had since COVID. And Lee, I can't see the chat, but if somebody writes in the chat, I'm happy to, acknowledge that.
I wrote challenging, just
challenging.
I've been talking a lot, but in a good way. So
challenging, yeah. Anyone else? Samantha, I think I see your hand raised. She can't unmute.
Guys, don't be afraid. Just hit that unmute button and
unmute or use the chat. Whatever.
Yeah, everyone should be able to unmute. I said eye-opening.
Eye-opening, okay. That could be in many different ways. Eye-opening. It's mysterious.
In a positive way for the most part.
In a positive. Okay. So it's a small group, but mostly when I ask that question with groups, they'll tell me challenging, anxiety provoking. Some say,
we had a stressful and a reflective.
Stressful, reflective. That's what I was gonna say. Some people swing it in a positive, like time for myself to kind of really think about things in life and so forth. But there is a lot of stress and anxiety surrounding it. So that's what we're gonna
centering. We have the centering. Somebody wrote centering.
Centering. Okay, centering. It kind of, it really has given us a moment to reflect on what our life was like before and what it is now and how we want it to be in the future. It certainly does. So we're going to shift gears. We talked about students with ADHD. This is still relevant for students with ADHD, but this is truly relevant for all. How do we help children cope with the changes resulting from COVID? So, COVID is something we've now been talking about for quite some time. I'm sure many of you have had conversations with your children about it to some extent, how to keep ourselves safe from it. We were working with many of our children on how to keep our masks on, how to wash our hands. We had to sing the whole ABC song to wash our hands to do it right, and so forth. But this is just a reminder that children in any time of stress will look to adults for guidance on how to react. And something very early on in child development, and I'm talking 3-4 months old, is what we call social referencing. Children at a very, very young age will reference you, the adult in the room, when they experience a social situation that they do not understand. So when they're exposed to a toy that's loud and makes noise, I'm talking about somebody who's just a couple months old, little baby, they're going to look to the parent first to say, is this safe? Is this something, what do I do? And that's what we call social referencing. And children do that up until they're much older, and they're looking at us now. So we have to remember that in this stressful time, while we acknowledge that there is concern, we all have to acknowledge there's concern. There's a pandemic out there, but we can't demonstrate anxiety or panic to the best of our ability, because we all have different circumstances and things that we're dealing with. But we need to teach our children positive preventative measures without talking about fears. And part of that is trying our best to reduce their anxiety. Something that's really important to understand about COVID is that a pandemic, unlike other disasters, for example, like a hurricane, tornado, etc., this pandemic does not have a clear beginning or ending. It can lead to increased uncertainty and distress because we don't know when this is going to end. When are things going to go back to normal? And there's two types of stress. There's something called acute stress, which is stress that occurs in a short-term kind of fashion. So if I get into a car accident, that is a huge stressor. Many of you have unfortunately had that feeling where your heart's in your throat and you can't calm yourself down for some time because your life was in danger for a moment. But it passes. That will go away. Your car will get fixed or towed or whatever, and you will move on, God willing, if you had no injuries and no one else was hurt. And that's going to pass and resolve itself. Chronic stress is when things don't let up, when that stress is continual and there's no end in sight. And that is what we're experiencing right now. There's a prolonged level of stress that we can determine to be something that could be chronic. And it really is only chronic depending on how we experience it, how we respond to it. But it's something we need to be quite aware of, that our systems, right, our body functions are experiencing levels of stress that are not typical for us. It's not something that we're used to. And this could cause some harm to us in our health, right? In our immune, digestive, cardiovascular, sleep. So we have to be kind of aware of that. So what can we do, right? We're in this really stressful situation. What can we do? This is the basics. I think I can breeze through this. We all recognize that we need to model basic hygiene for our children. We have to model the healthy practices to keep ourselves safe from the pandemic. But believe it or not, having the conversations about this with the children, saying, okay, here's what we can do to keep ourselves safe. We're gonna wash our hands. When you wash your hands, you have to do it for 20 seconds. So you're gonna sing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or Happy Birthday. These are for the younger children, of course, but our older children need to know this too. Compliment them when they use a Kleenex, compliment them when they sneeze or cough in their elbow, teach them how to do that. Because these sound like silly things that they should know, but teaching them that these very things that you likely do already are the things that keep us safe. So they feel now, I have a sense of control over this weird abstract thing called the pandemic or called COVID, and I know how to fight it, right? I know how to attack it. If I can't hug you, what other thing can I do? How can I replace that? So I elbow bump, I knee bump, I air hug, I air high five. Just continue to talk to them so they feel a sense of control over this by modeling hygiene and healthy life practices. Stay connected. I appreciate that all of you are here today. That is one way to stay connected and informed. And Diane kind of emphasized earlier, any concerns that you have, contact your school's teacher, to your school's school counselor, to your school. Every school has an assigned school psychologist like me, who's in my profession. There's a lot of resources out there. It's just a matter of seeking them out. Locate the learning resources. So I just shared with you that SEL home toolkit, which is a great toolkit for you to use at home to practice some of these strategies for mindfulness and SEL. We have a lot of things in our district. It's really hard to get that information out there. But if you speak to your schools and talk about the different concerns that you have, they can share those resources with you. Stay in touch with your teachers. Make sure your contact information is updated on the school side. I think one of the biggest challenges we have is when we try to reach out to parents, the numbers that we have are disconnected, or the home address is no longer accurate, whatever the case may be. But that's the way we keep in touch. That's the way we send emails and links and all that. So keeping your information up to date is extremely important. And again, I can't emphasize enough, reaching out to your school staff or connecting to your child's teacher is extremely important. How do we help our children cope? These all sound like very basic things, but it's important for us to review. Fostering calm, creating routines. I know that really sounds silly, but having a routine and a schedule provides a sense of control over the environment around us that specifically impacts children. If children don't have that sense of control of their environment, if the routines are all out of whack, I mean, all our routines are out of whack in some way, but trying to develop or replace the routine. So I'm going to give you an example. My family always got together for Sunday dinners. It's a big group of us. It's a 10 or 11 of us. And because of the many challenges we've had during COVID, we can't do that anymore. So what do you replace that with? It leaves an empty hole if I don't do something. So my children know that Sundays is the day that's what we would do. So if I didn't work on replacing that in some other manner, that was going to feel like more of a sense of loss. So what do? We do a virtual gathering. We get together and we chit chat. We've now replaced that routine with a new one so that it feels less of a loss of that old routine. So keep that in mind, that whatever routines you once had, not just telling the child we can no longer do that, but rather we can no longer do that. Instead, we're going to do this, replacing it with something. Be patient, be empathetic, show love, showing your love by giving your full attention, putting that phone down. I know it's hard for all of us. Take time to pause, let them talk about their feelings. I give this advice all the time in my trainings. The best time is nighttime. When you're putting your kids to bed, give them a moment, sit in their room, lay in their beds. I know it just depends on their age, but even the teenagers will respond to this, I promise. This is the time that the feelings come out. I don't know what it is about nighttime, but that's when all the feelings come out, and that's when the true worries of children come out. So give that bedtime time a time to read a story or time to just sit and chat. How was your day today when the lights are off? And you'll see some things come out that you probably wouldn't have anticipated. Engage in physical activity. I'm not a health guru, I'm not a nutritionist, but physical activity and going outdoors has shown extreme research in psychological health. Forget physical health, psychological health. So getting some sun, going outdoors, and engaging in physical activity has a lot of mental health benefits that we need to encourage our kids to do. A lot of our kids are doing a lot of screen time right now, so it's more like a forceful thing. We got to set the time to do it. As a family, do things that lift your spirits. Friday nights are movie nights, popcorn, pizza night, whatever. Just do something together as a family. Do things to help others. There's a lot of research also. It's called positive psychology and the psychology of kindness. Being kind and doing good things for others makes you feel good. So it's a selfish thing in a way, but it's true. It really does provide some mental health benefits. So as a family, maybe you can come up with some organization you guys want to help or some good thing you want to do. Maybe it's even just baking cookies for neighbors and delivering them to their mailboxes. I don't know, but something good that makes you feel good to do. And then set realistic goals and expectations while allowing flexibility. I can't emphasize this enough. I mean, a perfect example is right before this presentation, I told my children, please stay on that side of the house, remain quiet. Mommy has a work presentation. And then I had a 5-year-old pop up next to my shoulder just a few moments ago. I have to offer that flexibility to my child. She's 5 years old. How much can she really, stay away from mommy? So I'm not gonna get frustrated or upset. I'm gonna roll with the punches. And that's something we need to afford our children because we are in really unprecedented times. And we need to afford that flexibility for ourselves as parents. Okay, as parents and as educators, we are doing the very best that we can in these really strange circumstances. So the flexibility is not just flexibility we must afford to our children, but we need to afford it to ourselves, and we need to give ourselves some grace, because it's a struggle. Calming strategies, I won't go too much into detail. As I said, I'm going to send this presentation to Lee. Slow counting from 1 to 10, or counting backwards, or counting by tens while you're breathing. That's a calming strategy. Tensing up your muscles and releasing them. That's another calming strategy. Taking deep breaths and slow breathing. This is interesting because it really needs to be taught. Children need to hold their breath, know how to inhale and exhale, and take the time to pay attention to how they're doing it. Mindfulness practices, this sounds like a really bogus, hokey kind of thing, but that really just means focusing on the present and doing something that you enjoy and fully immersing yourself in it. When I went to the mind body medicine training, one of the mindfulness practices that they shared was listening to music and dancing. And I never even imagined that that was something that I did that was a mindful activity. I love music. It is my love language. I need music on all day long when I'm cleaning or cooking or what have you. But that's something that makes me feel good. And so whatever that thing is for you, whether it's cooking or listening to music or running or what have you, that's your mindfulness practice. That thing that you love, take the time to do it. And fully immerse yourself in it and enjoy it, because that's what mindfulness is about. It's not about cooking quickly to get dinner on the table, but not really paying attention to what I'm doing. It's actually losing yourself in it. That's what mindfulness is. And then positive self-talk. This is really important for our children because they tend to have some negative words for themselves, like I can't do this and I'm not smart enough, and trying to teach them different ways of saying, instead of I can't do this, well, this is challenging for me, I'm going to try a different way or what have you. So positive self-talk and rephrasing the things that they say. Again, I'm not going to read this list, but I'm just sharing with you some ideas for family activities in these times of social distancing. You'd be really surprised in sharing this with your child. It's called an at-home bucket list. Like, what is the bucket list of things that you want to do? And you can pick 1 a week, 2 a week, whatever the case is, and kind of do that one family activity each week and see how many you can complete. That's why it's called a bucket list. And then I got some for teenagers, and one of the ones that I really enjoyed looking at was restaurant wars. You're a teenager and you both make a recipe and you get to vote on whose recipe came out better. Room redo, you get to kind of recreate a room, and it doesn't mean buying new things, it means moving things around. So these are just activities to do to engage socially in this time of pandemic. To just make those connections, because children just feel safer when they have connections, when they have support and relationships with others. And I'm just going to end the presentation by sharing some mental health resources for anyone who is struggling beyond what is able to be coped with all these strategies that I shared. If a student is in crisis, here are some resources to reach out. There's 211. We have a mental health hotline here in the district. There's the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, the crisis text line, of course, 911. We have 23 behavioral health partnerships in the community. So if you're seeking any level of kind of support or assistance beyond what the school system is able to provide, that's a great plethora of support that we have. We also have, as a school district, called the Family Counseling Program, so where you have family therapists who are assigned to our zones, and if you reach out there, a referral can be made and a family therapist can work with your child or your family. And then we also have the BCPS Mental Health Portal, which is just a website where all these resources live. And so any different kind of difficulty or challenge that you may be facing as a family or for your child, this is a place to go to kind of find some resources. And then lastly, I think this is last, I can't remember having a slide after this, but these are apps that are available to all students when they log into their own Clever. So this is just important for you as a parent to be educated, to know that when they log into their Clever, they have access to this. So one of the things is the child abuse hotline, where they can report child abuse if needed. The Talk app is request to speak with a mental health professional. So by clicking that app, they can request to speak to a mental health professional immediately, and either a family counseling, a family therapist or a school social worker will follow up on that referral and speak to the child. And then SEL mindfulness toolkits I had shared with you earlier, but that's the quickest way to get to that link, where there's just a lot of great activities and things for children to help with their social emotional learning and their mindfulness practices. And Lee, I think this is the moment where I can open up for questions.
Yeah, and because we had a Q&A with Diane at the beginning, we're going to stick to questions that anybody might have related to your presentation.
Sure.
Melissa's not online anymore.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
So we'll try to figure out a way to get some information to her. But if anybody,
you can give her my email if you want, so she can reach out. Okay.
We'll do. So if anybody who is still on the call has any questions for Christina about the presentation, please feel free to unmute. The only thing that we would ask is, remember, this is being broadcast on Facebook, so we ask that you keep names confidential. Other than that, feel free to turn off the mute button and ask Christina anything you like. Take it away.
Hi, I just want to say that was awesome. I actually got a lot I learned a lot from that. Couple of questions. I had a little bit of issues. Family members actually tell me that they think my son might have ADHD. Could I just give you a couple of ideas that they've been talking about? Maybe you can help me out if I really do need to get him tested, or
Sure. If you want to email me, then we can have like a better, more thorough chat so I can help guide you a little better.
Is
Okay,
it okay
great.
if I post your email, Christina, in the chat so everybody
Yeah,
can see it? Okay,
absolutely.
I'll
Go
do it right
ahead. Sure.
while you're answering questions.
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Hi,
Hi.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So my son, he's 10 now,
Mm-hmm.
and we have tried everything that you showed in that presentation. Everything. I don't think we have missed any of the solutions you gave to solve a little bit the ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And he's going to middle school next year, and I'm concerned
Sure.
because he still has, he has good days, but sometimes he has these really bad days, which are happening now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I wonder if that's normal, if there is anything we can do about it. He complains there is a lot of work, that his teachers. He also has autism, but is high functioning.
Mm-hmm.
But I know there is a mix there that makes things pretty complicated.
Sure.
So I don't know. I mean, you're the experts, and I wonder if you have any advice of what I should continue doing.
I mean, I'm going to give you the same answer I give Samantha, which is email me and let's chat, because whenever a person asks me about their own child, I have a lot of questions and things that it requires me to kind of go down a path to be able to really advise or guide. It's really hard to answer that way. And like you said, if it's a student with both autism and ADHD, it's like an onion. There's a lot of layers and there's a lot of things happening at once. So what you think might be the ADHD primarily being the challenge, it could be due to his autism. So it'll be hard for me to know unless we have more of a thorough conversation.
But what could Broward schools offer? I mean, I know there is like a counselor. What else does Broward schools provide?
I mean, it depends the challenges he's having. So that again, if we have a deeper conversation about what specifically he's having a challenge with, I know you said these have been some rough times, but I would probably want to dig in a little more about what you mean when you say that, and then I can help guide you, because it just really depends if he's having some emotional challenges or behavioral challenges or academic challenges. The challenges are going to be, the way that I'm going to advise you to intervene or to help, or what resources to seek are going to be different depending on those challenges. And it kind of goes back to the beginning of my presentation. No child with ADHD is the same. And I always told parents who whenever I said, the characters, the evaluation is demonstrating that your child has a learning disability or that your child has autism, but your child is still your child. And a child with autism that's your child is not the same as the child with autism who's your neighbor's child. So that's why for these kind of questions, I'm going to need more individual information to be able to help.
Okay, yes, it's like a mystery.
I wanted to remind the people that your email address is in the chat.
Oh, thanks, Beth.
Yeah, and Christina, once you speak to the parent, of course, if you think you want to reach out to one of our support teams who supports that school, we can certainly work with them.
You got it, Beth. Thank you.
And we also put a link in the chat with our forms, our form, I don't know what you call it, thing. And you guys can, if you want a specific member from ESLS or you just have some general questions, besides Christina, she was gracious to put her email address right in there. That's fabulous. But if you have some additional questions or other things, other topics or other follow-up needed, we're more than happy to have staff call you or email you or whatever, however you would like to be communicated with. And that gives us an opportunity to give you that personalized attention.
And I'm never afraid to phone a friend. If you reach out to me about something that I'm not capable of helping you with, I have a lot of friends that I can reach out to. So.
Absolutely.
We did have a statement from a parent in who posted. Felicia said that she had a question about what are some first steps and some things to look at, but she's going to email you and said thank you for the amazing information. So just want to leave that up there.
Christina?
Yes.
This is Carla, I'm sorry to interject, but when you, in your experience and generally speaking, what have you noticed that has been successful in terms of social you mentioned social being a big issue, and it is a big issue. What have you noticed that's been the most successful school programs that, like being in music, or I don't know, are there you know what I mean? Like for junior high and
You're going to get
whatever.
tired of hearing me saying that, but what I'm going to say, it's really dependent on the child, right? It depends on what exactly the challenge is for that child and what that child specifically needs. So, there are children who have that level of impulse control, that what they need is called, self-regulation. They need to learn how to manage those circumstances. And I kind of gave that example of Johnny, who doesn't know how to share, right? He doesn't know how to take turns, and people are frustrated with him, so nobody wants to play with him. For some children, it's as simple as having a conversation and actually teaching it. Because we take for granted that social skills in most children are kind of developed through observation. So a lot of children develop these strategies by observing other children, by trial and error, right? Like, I tried something, it didn't work, let me try something different. And for some children, there's actual strategic teaching that needs to occur. We have to almost set up these circumstances of play, these social, it's like not I want to call it a social experiment, but I kind of have to set up these situations. And as a teacher, I kind of would pick a student that I knew probably had the personality to work with this child through this. So we would pair them up, kind of engage in some sort of turn taking, if turn taking was the issue, let's say, some turn taking activity, and then I would walk them as the educator through that strategy. And we can do it as parents, and many of us do it as parents, right? Where our kid is little and they go to play at somebody's house and they're not sharing, or they're doing something, and we have to talk them through that. But we have more patience with the young ones, because that's the age where we're kind of expected to teach them. And we don't realize that for some of these older students with attention difficulties, they're having very similar challenges that require us to just literally talk to them through it. So again, it's really different. And that's why for some kids, team sports works, because there's a lot of turn taking and depending on others and people depending on you. For others, it's karate or martial arts, because it's keeping you kind of in tune with your body and in tune with your self-control. So it's really going to depend on what the challenge that individual child has. But there's a lot of different
I guess
things.
I'm more or less saying, like, what programs, like there's some schools, I've been in ESC for a long time, and I go to the autism meetings, especially. Some schools might have a buddy system. Like, what programs have you seen inside schools that you've seen that seem to, because like not every school has a buddy system.
Yeah, I'm not the best person to ask that question, because I don't believe in programs so much as I believe in strategies. So a lot of programs have strategies built into them, and I think they're great. But it doesn't mean I have to do a specific program to teach the strategy. So for me, it's always been about what is that child's weakness, and how do I teach to that weakness? And I could use a lot of toolkits or things that I can pull off different places. I can use a program, but I can't speak for like one program or two programs that I know of. I know of many great programs in our district. I mean, social thinking is a great program in our district. Zones of regulation is another great program in our district.
Well, where can we find out about those programs? Because, for example, my son's school, won't mention the name, I know we're being recorded, but they are a great school, but and he's leaving this year. So my thing is, I'm trying to do as much as I can to leave them with some new ideas, because like they have a new ESC teacher, director, it changes. So I just want to leave them with some things. I'm sure they can get them, but I'd like to see myself help them like implement at least one new thing. I don't know.
Sure. I mean, we those trainings exist in our district, and we as employees can sign up through Lab. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that's our professional development system where we log in and can get trained on these
as a parent, where is there a list of things that all the schools do, or no? I'd have to call every.
And no school's obligated to have every single program that's in our district,
no,
right?
That's
why. So no, I don't have a list for you of like,
it's just that we're new. We're kind of new to the autism world. Our school is fairly new. So they're trying. They really are. Yeah. All right. Well, I'll call every school. No, I'm kidding.
Well, they can reach out to their, and Beth mentioned that we at each school, we have curriculum supervisors and support folks that are assigned to each school. So I would encourage the folks at your school to reach out to their assigned person. if they're seeking any kind of resources, because we, again, depending on what it is that they're focusing on or what the needs are for their student population. And that's why no schools are ever going to be required to have the very same programs, because every school population and every school is different and the needs are going to be different. So we have to kind of tailor everything. And again, I people are probably tired of hearing me say that, but what I choose for one child is not going to be what I choose for another.
Actually, that helps me to stay focused on that. Yeah, so thank you. You really were phenomenal. We were talking about you on Facebook. We were like, she is awesome. Yes, she is.
Oh boy, that's embarrassing. Well, thank you.
I saw it. It's there. There's definitely some positive comments on Facebook about you, Christine.
Happy to hear. Happy to hear.
I see. Oh boy, disappeared. Dang it, Zoom. Someone had their hand up, but now it's gone. I'm sorry. Does anybody else have any questions for Christina regarding anything in the presentation tonight, or any comments to the group? Besides, thank you, and that was awesome.
Thank you, Christina. That was awesome, and we appreciate it. We appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight.
Oh, thank you everyone who took the time to just listen, because sometimes I bore myself, but I appreciate the attention and in this forum. I know it's not easy. We're all having challenges being focused on virtual calls. So just thank you all for your attention and your time.
Thank you, Lee, as well. Everyone have a great night.
You too, and have a wonderful night, everybody. We're going to go ahead and end the meeting because we're just a little bit over. Our next meeting is in February. It's the first Wednesday of the month. So we will see you guys in February. Have a great month, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, guys.